So in my previous videos, I've been talking about the rules and also about the chaos. Okay, so um, I mentioned rules in the context of systems and I think I was describing the example of the board game, saying that, well, we need rules which are basically constraints and conditions to cooperate together productively. And we can't do without that. And actually, rules simplify everything for us. They make us predictable to each other. They establish the game that we're playing, they establish our roles, and they establish a shared common ground, um, with which, of course, we already can start doing something together. Um, and without that, we just can't read each other's minds. We would need to spend time to observe each other to understand what are we up to, what um, what is the way we perceive things, what are our motivations. We would need to spend time to observe each other, or we would need to spend time to negotiate. But with the rules, you can start just basically um, with clarifying already stated um, ground for knowledge and action. And so you cut the cost of negotiation and actually experiencing each other, so to trust. Rules do make us predictable to each other, even if we're strangers. If we act upon agreed rules, and I see you're acting as we agreed, I know what to expect from you. Not because I know you wholly, but because I know the rules, because I know the game, and because I see you acting them out. Okay, and so, um, and I also been talking about the chaos or an overwhelming uncertainty, which actually comes from the complexity of the world, of the world we live in, because it's filled with multiplicity. It's not a complexity um, per se, but it's a multiplicity with which we can't handle, and so that's why we call it complex, and that's why we struggle with it, and that's why it overwhelms us, and that's why we are stressed and anxious when we can't handle it. So we try to clean up our table, because when there are too many things, we can't use the space productively. We can't find anything. If we need to use the space of the table and it has too many things in it, especially if we need to find something, we can't. Not because uh, objectively it's bad to have too many things on the table, but because we are limited and our capacity is limited, and we just can't find the thing we need when there are too many things. That's it. Um, uh, so uh, there's actually something really mm, connecting those two topics that I mentioned, because uh, we need rules as a system, as a complex system, which is each individual or a group. um, we need rules, and we need them to uh, subdue the chaos. Let's use the poetic uh, terms for that, just because I want to subdue the chaos. So we need rules to reduce the uncertainty. We need rules to reduce the complexity, to simplify the world for ourselves, to reduce the complexity to our uh, no, to reduce the multiplicity to our limited capacity, so we could cooperate or function efficiently, right? And so now I also want to mention that it is a necessary part of life that you need to um, go through to function, to live and to do it good, efficiently, right? Productively. So to handle the multiple things in your life, to handle all your motivation, to handle all your emotions, to handle all your thoughts, your goals, etc., you need to reduce the complexity of things, to reduce the multiplicity to the level of your capacity. And you need rules. We need rules. And if we get rid of this simplified understanding of what rules are, which is something like um, only constraints to our freedom, to our personal freedom, and self articulation, then we can see rules as something um, so useful and um, even necessary to ourselves. We could see rules for what it is also a conditions to something, a conditions to some cause. We experience the world as the causal relationships. If you do something, you get something else. If you don't do something, things are just not getting done. If no one does anything, things actually get worse. Because to sustain a complex system, uh, you have to effort. There should be an action, and otherwise, the tendency of the world is to, let's say, chaos, right? To dissipation, to um, mm, because especially for people who are biological living systems, uh, we age in relation to a time. And so if you stay at one place, yeah, if you stay at one place, then you degrade. Things go increasingly worse for you. Um, your capacity becomes more and more limited, you know, um, and you age. And so uh, to stop is not really an option. You need to move, and you need to move efficiently, right? Uh, rules are conditions for you to move in a specific direction, because uh, let's also understand this, which is something like a rule of okay, not a rule of chaos or uncertainty. That's just how I would express the problem of the uncertainty, of the chaos, overwhelming difficulty in life. You can't do anything. Literally, there are too many possibilities. Chaos is the possibilities, the opportunities, the complexity of things you and in comparison to your limitations. So you can do too many things. Just as I was explaining the example of the board game, the rules help there to constrain all the possibilities of action, because if you would just take the group of strangers and you would put them together and you would tell them to start playing, they would be confused and lost, because they could do anything. They could play anything. They could literally start doing anything they want or not doing, and there are too many possibilities, and their action would be chaotic. It would be not efficiently directed to the exact result, and so the result wouldn't be efficiently achieved. And so the rules are the conditions to achieve the goal. The rules are the direction from for the desired result. If you want to get this result, if you want to play a fun game, if you want to win in the board game example, you have to abide by the conditions for the victory conditions. And these is also what rules are. They are constraining. Don't be confused. They are constraining too. They constrain you, but they constrain you to direct you, because there are too many things that you can do. There are too many things that you can pay your attention to. But if you will pay your attention to everything, you will get lost. And you don't want to get lost, because then you will not achieve anything. Then chaos and complexity will overwhelm you, and you won't be able to achieve anything productive. And so you do want to achieve something, you want to get the productive results, and so you abide by the conditions which would allow you to do that. And this is the role of the rules in a chaos, in the overwhelming multiplicity of life. And so now, when you understand the necessity of it, the utility of it, you understand that what we do for ourselves and for other people, we pass it on. We generate rules. We come up with conditions consciously, um, that would help us to what we call live better, more productively, to get the satisfying results, to feel ourselves better, to survive. This is an important part as well, to survive, to be able to have sustaining long-term relationship, to reproduce, to have family, um, and as human species, we are able to go from the unconscious uh, articulation of these rules just being like embedded rule system, like, let's say, animals, right? They don't think about doing these things. They don't make up the rules they follow. They do follow some conditions, they do follow some constraints, but those are biological, um, and maybe they can be, let's say, trained, right? They can be trained, they also can adapt to the situations, but they wouldn't have the awareness of it, and they wouldn't be able to uh, make a judgment on it and then pass it on, and then so they could continue following this judgment, or use it as a feedback and come up with another rule system. Okay, so they are not able to have such a complex learning and such a complex rule generating solution, but we do, which is great for us, as we can see. We've been able, as a human species, to live um, well, to and to have an abundance of things, right? And to increase our to raise our well-being on a massive scale. So, well, it works well for us. Now, um, so we generate rules as human beings, right? We live, we observe, we experience, and then we make judgment. Uh, we make judgment of what is better, and for what is worse for us, and then we encode this judgment, we transcribe it, we uh we we leave it on a paper, we put it in the softwares, we uh we have a bible, so we transcribe these rules, we pass it on, so they would be also uh what so they would continue, because we as individuals die, but the pattern of living can continue on. And those are the ideas, those are the judgments on how to live and what to do. Those are the stated rules, which are the information. So we generate rules and we pass them on as the important part of our lives, because we need them so much. We need those conditions, because if we, let's say, we'll take humanity as just one individual. If individual would be losing his memories on how to live, what to do each time, he wouldn't be able to progress, right? He wouldn't be able to improve and to do much. But as he stores the observation, the feedback on the world, um, he is able to learn from it and to adapt to this feedback. And so this is very important for us to be able to develop, to live better and better, to achieve a more and more desired goals, and be able to uh, achieve them with higher efficiency. We generate and pass on the rules as the necessary must process, right? As a crucial part of our being. And um, what is also important to understand is that rules, or I could as well call them conditions for something, conditions for victory, conditions for desired goal, conditions for a satisfactory life, conditions for the virtue, conditions for a long lasting relationships, conditions for financial freedom or success, conditions for um, perhaps appealing and attractive personality, conditions for uh, maybe high social status, or maybe good social relationships. I don't know. So those are the conditions that we need to know to have the goal, right? But if we wouldn't have if we wouldn't pass them on, if we wouldn't store them, we would need to discover it each time, because our consciousness doesn't know it from the birth. We learn it observing and experiencing. We discover those conditions for a certain life, for a certain goal. We discover the goal. We discover what the world is, and we discover what we can get and how can it be done. So we discover it, and to discover it, you the problem of discovery is that you need to spend the time to do it, and you need to well you need to spend time because you observe, and you have to experience it, to understand, to make the observation, to understand what it is. You have to live through that, okay? And living through that takes time, energy, effort, and so your resources and your limited system. Don't forget that your capacity is limited. So um if you would spend all the time to learn all the lessons, well, that would be really unproductive. And what we just understand with that is that it's a very good thing that we pass on the knowledge, that we pass on the conditions for some goals. Uh, and it, we do that to help ourselves to to be directed through life in the conditions of this overwhelming multiplicity of things. So we also so these rules or conditions, this is like information, right? That we generate, we observe, we encode um, our observations, and then we pass on. This is information, but it's very important. It's not any kind of information, because uh, a lot of part is getting forgotten. A lot of information is has been there, and now it's just nowhere. Uh, a lot of information, it's just um, not that um, it's not important enough to survive the time, to last through time. Perhaps it's been some individual case, someone's individual experience. Um, it's also arguable that it's not important, because oftentimes it's actually the opposite. We find individual cases and experiences and stories be really useful because we share biological similarity, and those experiences are not random, and we can learn a lot from that, and we can relate. And through this, and because we can relate, we can make do the feedback, even if it was the worst case scenario. This is exactly why it could be useful for us, because we could make a judgment on what at least we shouldn't have been doing. So usually individual story is also very important. It's hard to state um, what is the attribute for the selection of the information, because obviously there is a certain kind of uh, selection that goes into information that we pass. Something survives the time, something doesn't. So it's very important to understand what does survive and why did it do that. Why was it more important um, than all the things that didn't survive? And what is it in that? What conditions to what outcome is there that we can learn? Because if it's have survived so through the time, uh, and been passed and passed on by people, maybe it's because it's been acted out in some certain ways. Even if it's again negative example, it's been acted out uh, as the opposition, like don't do that. You have some let's say story, like negative sort of story, maybe ugly story, maybe you have some tragedy, and so let's say to act out this would be to learn what not to do, right? And so it still has been acted out, and it's been important for acting. It's been important because it's learned people how to act and how not to act, right? um, in the same time. So anyway, let's move on. Now, we see the importance of it. We see that we must come up with the conditions if we want to achieve any results. And this is the process of our individual lives and our social life and our lives as human species, to go through that process of understanding the and acquiring the and living out the conditions to a certain life. And when we don't have these conditions, when we make poor choices in figuring out, when we just make poor choices in following the conditions that serve us well, that is, that they actually bring us the desired results, uh, or when we make a poor judgment on the results that we would actually desire. So yes, the condition serves well, but the result is ultimately not what we have wanted, and so we made the bad judgments. And yeah, so unless we have that, uh, we um yes, so uh, we then don't operate efficiently, and we then are again lost and we struggle. uh, and so, not to be lost and overwhelmed, we have to again make up the order and separate it from chaos, this is, of course, these philosophical terms, but they are actually applicable, because the order are the patterns. The order is the conditions to something, right? Because because again, we don't experience things to pop up randomly, and we can know the world. And the reason we can know the world, because we can link all things together. And so we because there is the casual relationships that we observe, and then we can assume things. The world can be predictable to us. We can start assuming things, and we can build the understanding, right? Exactly, because it's not all random. There are some patterns, and when we understand these patterns, we can use them for our own benefit. We can gain the control. We can gain the level to have a control of the outcome of the life, right? We understand that, okay, so this, when this happened, that emerges, and then we can influence it. We can make sure that what we want will emerge. So that's how we gain this levels lever I can never pronounce it, level, to have a control over our lives. Because if everything random, then nothing can be known and understood and acted upon, and then you would be completely lost and dysfunctional. But thanks that it's not, you can function, but you need to understand the pattern upon which to function productively. You do function already, because everything is not random. You are able to understand things. You do understand things, but the question is, well, how well do you understand the things? And how efficiently can you achieve your goals? So we are in a search of these patterns. We are in the story of the success. How to succeed, how to win, how to have a good, virtuous life, how to have better than the worst. We are in this journey of figuring it out. This is our life. This is it. This is it. It's not a part of our life. This is our life. And um, we've been doing it for centuries and generations. We have passed out these patterns of life, of a good life, let's say, of a desired life or conditions. We did it through, even if it's negative, undesired life and conditions, it serves for people not to, of course, have it, but to make a judgment and understand, so you wouldn't have it. And so we keep it. We keep the negative to achieve the positive in comparison. Okay, and so we have all this example of that helps us to that shows the pattern, and we pass it on. We do it in art, we do it in a poetry, we do it in all the kinds of writings, and through films, movies, and all those things. Um, we do it when we watch a motivational YouTube video, because we want to succeed, because we want to see this pattern, because this human is um, living pattern of these conditions. He embeds in himself the rules. He lives by them. He abides by them. He in himself have become the pattern that lives out those rules. And we watch him and we adore, because we see that he himself become uh, what could you say, the manifestation of this pattern of, let's say, good life. And we want to become like that. We want to follow it. um, and yeah, uh, so the the world is filled with these passing on patterns, and we have to make a good judgment into grabbing into it. um Now, nihilists would be, nihilist, right? They would be critical about the value in the world, but here it is. You can't argue it out. Um you can't argue against it. There is the value and the meaning is everywhere, and it passed on through that patterns, through that conditions which are actual. So these conditions for a good life, a better life, a desired kind of life, which are actual, because if they wouldn't be actual, you would be lost and dysfunctional. You would be lost and dysfunctional, because if there are no patterns in reality, then it can't be comprehensive. Then you can't understand the world. Because if everything changes immediately, and nothing is stable, then the chaos would be too much for you, and you wouldn't be able to understand anything at all. You wouldn't be able to build a knowledge, and you certainly wouldn't be able to act upon this knowledge, and it certainly would not benefit you and achieve and bring you the results you want. But we see the opposite. We see that you can understand the world, you do have knowledge, you do build knowledge of things, and you not only the world and people can be comprehensible and understandable for you, but you also can act in accordance with your understanding, in accordance with your knowledge, and it would pay off. This is very important, and it's literally the argument against the claims of nihilists, because now you can't claim that there is no meaning. There is no meaning in a random world. But in a world which has patterns to a certain to a certain results, this is the meaning, and it is the value, because the outcome, the result, is the value for you. And now you know the pathway, the direction. If you adopt a right pattern, if you will be wise in your selection and prioritization, if you will be wise in your judgment in adapting the successful pattern, then you can actually live out a better life, right? You can have it better, and you can enjoy it, right? Um, and you can even pass it on. You can pass it on to other generations who would also be able to enjoy it. And so, all right, now we understood that. And uh, another question then becomes not how we find this pattern, because this pattern is everywhere. The lessons are literally everywhere. If we look closely, we see that uh, we pass the information in everything. We have it in our when we share how did our day went. There is an embedded judgments in there, right? Um, that our information includes. We almost all the time put in our judgments in there, or we already providing even the feedback upon the information, because it's not any information that is important. That's information which we can use, um, and which would improve our lives, that is important, in comparison to information which wouldn't make our like a difference, right? But it's not again, what we also find is that usually information does make a difference, but maybe it doesn't make a difference in hand, right? Maybe I receive the information, I don't know how to apply it, or I'm not in conditions where I need this information. If I would be in conditions where I would need this information, then it would have a of course utility for me. So anyway, but the information is everywhere. The pattern is passed. These conditions, these rules are passed everywhere, in stories, in art, in literature. um, we can find it if only we would look good enough. If only we would understand how much we need it, how much we need this pattern. Why? Because your life is so limited, and you can't have all experiences. You can't live all lives, but you can read someone's stated experience, and you can just experience it through reading it. This is also neurologically true. You can relate on not only like in some as an abstract concept, is in some abstract space. When you relate, you experience something through you. You get to experience the same feeling which the person describes, or have experienced it when you, let's say, read that book. um, when you read that story and you cry, you literally get to experience what the other person experienced, even though you didn't have the conditions to experience that. You didn't have that romance story, you didn't have that tragedy. um, you're not the Romeo, but you get to experience how it feels like, and this is very important, because you can grab this pattern which required a life to create. Individuals die, but the pattern, the conditions for a good life, a good thing, a desired outcome, they are passed on. What it also means, it means it takes an individual life to get this knowledge and experience. Again, we discover it, we don't know it, and it takes life to discover it. And so now you see that knowledge is very important, and the kind of knowledge that teaches you the best, the pattern upon and conditions for a good life, this is the most important kind of knowledge. And so that's how we subdue the multiplicity. That's how we find the direction. That's how we are not we what we do so we wouldn't get lost. We find the specific conditions to achieve a specific goals. We state our goals, and also maybe, well, what we stated we didn't actually desire, but we have to take the conditions, be wise, and to figure it out. We need to abide by conditions and constraints and the rules, because everything is too much. And this will be that